At this hour, a major announcement from social media giant Facebook, an announcement that's likely to have far-reaching impacts in this country and around the world. The company's oversight board upholding Donald Trump's ban from the site. The board says Facebook was justified in kicking the former president off, but also saying it is now back on Facebook to decide if Trump should remain locked out. Trump has been banned from Facebook since the day after the Capitol insurrection, banned over his posts that many clearly saw and see as helping to incite the pro-Trump mob that attacked the Capitol. This decision is very much about Donald Trump, and it's no coincidence then that he launched a new communications platform online to connect with his supporters just yesterday. But this decision could also have big ripple effects that reach across the globe. It's also about Facebook's power to decide when and how to regulate speech online. It's about where social media platforms are willing to draw the line between protecting free speech and public safety. It also shines a bright light on how Facebook has really never suffered any consequences themselves for allowing dangerous lies and disinformation to linger on its platform. Make no mistake, that's still a problem even with today's announcement. CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan joining me now with all of these details. Donnie, can you walk us through what this announcement means?
Hey, Kate, yeah, this is a nightmare for Facebook, really. They set up this supposedly independent board to make the tough decisions that Facebook didn't really want to make itself. But now the board has punted it all back to Facebook. So now the board is saying Trump should remain suspended from Facebook. The decision on January 7 to suspend him was the right decision, they say. But, and this is a very, very big but, take a look at this statement from the board. They say it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. And the board insists that Facebook reviews this matter to determine and justify a proportionate response that is consistent with the rules that are applied to other users of its platform. And it says Facebook, not the board, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, has to make that decision within the next 6 months, so by November. And just to take it all back, Kate, to January 6th, a reminder of what it was. What was the straw that really broke the camel's back here for getting Facebook, Trump kicked off Facebook? This was the text. This is what he said in a video that was posted on January 6th to his supporters. He said, "I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election. Everybody knows it. Especially the other side. We love you. You're very special." Of course, obviously, that is all false, but that is what got Trump, part of what got Trump kicked off the platform.
Yeah, and that's important to remember what he said, and that was just some of it, right, Donnie? So, Donnie, stick with me, if you could. Joining us also right now is Elizabeth Linder. She's a former executive at Facebook and chief diplomatic officer at Broach Associates, and CNN's John Harwood also here. Elizabeth, I'm curious what your reaction is to this. How big of a deal is this decision?
Yeah, Kate, well, thank you so much. This is, of course, a seminal moment in the history, not only of Facebook, but in the future of internet governance. And I have to say that from a global geopolitical perspective, the consequences, of course, are huge in America, but as you said, also around the world. My reaction is this is a nuanced, thoughtful, refreshingly balanced read coming out of an internet issue that I think we long have been waiting for to see coming from the Silicon Valley world, but in this case made from a global group of experts from around the globe.
John, does this mean something for President Biden and the current administration? Does this impact Donald Trump's hold on the Republican Party?
I don't think so at the moment, Kate. Look, Joe Biden has been well served by the approach he's taken so far, which is to keep his eye on the ball on COVID, on economic recovery. He's had very steadily throughout his presidency approval ratings in the low to mid-50s. Those are levels that Donald Trump never reached for a single day of his presidency. As for Trump, let's remember, Donald Trump had full access to social media in 2020. He lost the election. He has not had access to social media for the first several months of this year, and he has kept his grip on the Republican Party. I think social media makes it easier for Donald Trump to sit on a sofa with a phone and do things easily, but there is a very large conservative media ecosystem that he has access to that pushes the same stories that he does. And the core of Donald Trump's appeal is not about the mechanism of Facebook or Twitter. It's about he is the person who embodies and speaks to the fear of a certain segment of the American population that demographic, social, cultural, economic changes in the country are leaving them behind. And Donald Trump says, I'm going to try to turn back the clock, make America great again. It wasn't enough in 2020, but that's the core appeal that he has. And he has that, he embodies that sentiment whether or not he's on Facebook.
It's a great point. And Donnie, it's not like Donald Trump being banned was a cure-all for disinformation on Facebook, a conversation that we've been having for a really long time, right? I mean, and the structure of this independent review board, if you will. I mean, what should we think of the use of this board? Funded by Facebook, and it's kind of like a test experiment in self-regulation. I'm wondering if we should take this structure seriously.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at the oversight board. One is the cynical look to say, well, this is Facebook just trying to punt it over to a group of experts and claim it's independent and Zuckerberg can wash his hands of it, even though this is still his social media platform that he controls. But on the other hand, you know, I think some people would say that it's better to have a group of experts rather than Zuckerberg just himself making these decisions. Zuckerberg and Facebook have been very clear with Congress and with the government. They want some guidance. They don't want to take full responsibility for everything that's going on their platform. They want some legislation. Obviously, very, very tricky to do anything around speech, and rightly so, particularly in this country with the First Amendment. But they want some guidance. So I think by putting together this board, they have this experiment, and they're trying to show, I guess, the world how something like this could work. Just finally, Kate, to John's point of, you know, Trump obviously looms large over the Republican Party right now. We can see that through everything. But Facebook does make it much, much easier, and very, very importantly, and we saw how effectively the Trump machine used this in 2016 and 2020, for fundraising, for taking in cash for his PAC to support pro-Trump candidates in 2020 next year in the midterms. Very, very important. So it's a significant decision, particularly in terms of bringing money into campaigns.
Just real quick, I just want to make sure I'm really clear on this. Facebook has its decision to make in 6 months. Is there a chance that Facebook makes a decision like, okay, now Donald Trump can be back on? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, that is what the board has said. You guys have to come up with, you know, what is the decision here? Is he allowed back? Okay. Does he have to say? And I mean, one other thing which can complicate matters further is right now Trump is technically a private citizen. What happens if he decides to run again and he becomes a candidate? Will Facebook continue to block a candidate?
And this gets to, Elizabeth, something you're kind of touching on in an area of your expertise. Like, what message does this send to politicians here, but other world leaders? Your job at Facebook was, I'm going to simplify it really dramatically, was to connect world leaders to Facebook, facilitate their access on Facebook. What is the real impact that you see here on that?
Yeah, well, you know, what made Facebook always from the beginning so special was the fact that this was a democratizing platform. You could be anyone from anywhere and you could have a voice. The biggest mistake that Facebook made in this whole space was to create this special category around newsworthiness, putting special protections around the powerful. That was never the point. That was never the promise of the internet and of these tech platforms. So I was most encouraged by the board really calling out the newsworthiness question to say, look, Facebook needs to start to take a step back and clarify what those protections look like, and then what the proportionality looks like when it comes to inciting violence, and do a much better job of figuring out where they fit into that space. It's also important, of course, to note that of the 2.8 billion people that use Facebook, most of those individuals live outside the United States. And sitting here in London, I can certainly say that people around the world are really watching this because this is about their world leaders, too. And this is about issues that really matter to them.
2.8 billion people. That's all you really need to know, and why this is an important decision that happened today. How many people this can impact.